Let me take a look.
That'd be fun.
Sorry about that, guys. So my name is Carlos. I go by Carlos Phoenix. It's a long story, but that is my middle name. And while he's setting up the presentation, I'll explain a little bit about my career. So I started at the age of 15 in advertising, the nation's largest ad agency in here in the United States. And as a little kid, I got into the adult world really fast. Pan Am, Ford Motor Company, marketing and advertising was the big deal back in 1985. Fast forward, I got into film and television as an art director and building sets. And then fast forward, in the middle of all that, I was also a sci-fi fantasy illustrator. So, blocking my own stuff here. So you'll see some of my illustrations here for the comic book world, for the film world. I used to do sci-fi fantasy, but the art started with storyboards for TV shows, commercials, and so on. So once I got into doing movies and TV shows with storyboards, it led into the deeper art directing and building sets and set dressing and that type of thing. So that's where I started getting into my technical skills of understanding framing and cropping and color and light and that type of thing. And so that'll get into the creativity. Later, I got into more production stuff with Warner Brothers and Disney. So you'll see some sketches here for Warner Brothers, the Batman films. I also worked in the music industry doing album covers. So I got some album covers here that I had worked on. So I really got involved in anything creative in the film, television, media world, from print to music to video. As we fast forward past that, I got into being behind the camera at Good Morning America. I also got to do post-production work for a lot of reality shows, working on Broadway video, which is a hop, skip, and a jump from here. So I've done stuff for the real world, some stuff for MTV, and I can go on and on with that kind of stuff. I didn't want to linger too much on that. But towards 1997, the internet was starting to pick up a little bit more. Everybody had like your 56K modems, and you guys may have heard of a company named Fubu, which is a fashion company. So Fubu had started doing live streaming in 1997. So at the top of the Empire State Building, they started doing a live production studio where they were interviewing celebrities, a lot of hip hop artists and stuff like that. And they had hired me on board because, well, they were trying to get an audience. And the problem that they were having is that they didn't know how to market to that audience. So we did some special presentations to try and get people to log on. They were way too early. Just the internet speeds weren't there. They were streaming with great celebrity content, yet everything was buffering at all times. So that was the big challenge in 1997, was the internet speeds were too slow. 33 to 56K modems was like kind of the standard when you bought a computer at the time. So it was really slow for transmission. We did use all the latest technologies at the time, such as QuickTime player servers, real-time play. Yeah, some of you are shaking your heads. You kind of know about all that old technology. Some of you are probably too young to even know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's what we dealt with. And everything was math. So your bit rates and all that type of stuff, you kind of had to work those video files and do the mathematics before transmitting, all that type of stuff. I felt like a science teacher at the time. It wasn't fun. But that didn't go very well, so they kind of went out of business. But not Fubu, but that streaming service. Fast forward again, we experimented a lot with Ustream and Livestream and any new service that was coming out into the streaming world in the early 2000s. And that's what my world was becoming at the time. I just loved it. But the reason I loved it wasn't so much the math, it was the opportunity to become an independent content producer. So I've already worked for all the big guys. And the opportunity here was what's going to happen in the future with content creation. You no longer have to be a Hollywood person. You no longer have to be a New York executive. I was trying to figure out how to get content, create content. I've already seen the talk show behind the scenes stuff. I used to work at the Ricky Lake show, if anybody remembers that. And I have friends who worked in Jerry Springer show and all those type of shows. And I said, well, you can kind of do that at home or a studio and stream it yourself if the cameras are good enough and so on. So we played around with technology for decades. Like, you know, for me to say live streaming is decades is insane. But as I was getting reputation, I was interviewing celebrities and I was doing streams. Other corporations were starting to pay attention to what I was doing. And then I started getting calls from like the Olympics. Hey, how do you do this and how do you do that? I remember getting a phone call. I was in bed. I was living in Atlanta at the time. And hey, look, you're like the 9th person we've called. We've called these other TV studios and stuff, and they can't seem to figure out this whole live streaming concept. And so we have a couple of questions. It's okay if you take a month to get back to us. So far, nobody's gotten back to us. And so they started asking me a lot of technical questions, and I'm like, well, oh, this is all you need to do is you need to do this and that and the other thing. So they're like, wait, you know the answer? I'm like, well, that's what you called for, right? Like, well, we called all these other guys and nobody knew the answers. So they literally flew their engineers to Atlanta. We had a nice, beautiful dinner. I was just giving away the information for free, not realizing that I'm just giving away like the next generation of who knows what. And that's where a lot of this stuff has begun. So I started a company called Live Streaming Master, not because I felt I was the master, but I wanted to teach the companies to become the masters of their own domain. I wanted them to start creating this new epic world of where streaming can go. Because I didn't know where the end of the line was. It was literally the beginning. And so I would get these phone calls, I would get into these other productions, and I'd get into some really unusual stuff. So I get a phone call from Frank. And Frank's telling me, hey, we kind of heard about you, and we'd like to know if maybe you can help us get our product into market. I have no clue who Frank is. So I'm like, well, tell me about your product. And, you know, he went over it, and I'm like, well, look, I don't know how I can get you any kind of distribution. I've never done stuff like that before. But I am connected to a few because I'm selling product now. I sell a lot of the stuff that's here. Online only, not trying to compete. But I'm very familiar with all the different technologies, and I'd love to test out your stuff. Tell me, and I'll tell you, give my honest opinions. And if it's good, you know, I'll see who I can talk to and who can call. So they send me the OG, the original YOLO. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. It's so small and so compact. Like, I'm really trying to think, can this do some of the stuff that I had to Frankenstein? Now, mind you, when I was doing live streamings, nothing really existed. There was no software. There was, you know, maybe Zoom, but you couldn't stream to, you know, from Zoom into anything. So I had to really Frankenstein the pieces together to see if I can make it all work cohesively. Bring in guests from out of town, all sorts of stuff, capture their video. It was crazy. You had to really soup up that computer to make it work. And then I get this little box. Now, software was starting to come out. Livestream had some online software and some software you can download. Ustream had some stuff, but this blew my mind. And so I started playing with it. I fell in love with the yolobox, like deeply in love. Like, his wife doesn't want me to talk to him anymore, but we had developed a great relationship. I started calling all the distributors in the United States. And now I don't know any of them, but as soon as I said my name, Carlos Phoenix, because that's what I go by, they're like, oh, I follow you. And so, unbeknownst to me, you know, when you're just in front of a camera, you don't know how much you're reaching. So that's one of the cool benefits of doing it consistently. Developed a few relationships. Some of them were like very hesitant. Oh, well, we don't know anything about the product, never heard of the brand, stuff like that. So I ended up talking to my main distributor, and I basically said, look, you gotta love this product. I've been using it, it's insane. You gotta, you know, nobody's got anything like this. And that's where it all began. So we got into a few meetings, we signed the deal, and now the rest is history. So I ended up loving the product. The OG was fantastic. If you guys don't know, I think it started with a Kickstarter, right? So for it to go to Kickstarter and have a solid product the way they have is incredible. So it was very user-friendly, and that's the number one thing that I think sold it on me, for me. So we got into getting distribution set up. We started selling it. COVID started happening, and then COVID started ending. But I did use it heavily because if everybody's home, COVID was like the best opportunity in the world. When you were able to sit at home and know that literally the entire population of the world is sitting at home, they're all twiddling their thumbs. And you have a Yolobox creating content to the world, literally. And we had people from England, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, all watching content. I was inviting celebrities live. I mean, I was bringing people who were like followers on camera as well. And we would have shows like crazy. I was doing lives every day. And it just, opened up a great following for me, but it also proved that the product is very versatile. And I didn't use a computer, so that was incredible. All right, so then they couldn't travel after COVID for some time, so they asked me to represent the product at NAB. So there was an enormous amount of people interested, and I was a one-man guy. If you've gone to NAB, now they have a team, which is fantastic. But at the time that I was doing it, nobody. And the lines were around the convention. So I had no voice at the end of the convention, but I was interviewed multiple publications online. Recently, I launched at NAB here in New York the S3 and the S7, which you'll see some of them in use here. And incredible products on a consistent level. I introduced the Max, which I don't know if is in line anymore. You guys doing the Max anymore? No, okay. Well, but it was a lot of fun representing the product and seeing the interest. The other thing is I also speak Spanish. So then we had Latin America show up at NAB, and I was able to explain to them exactly what the product was, and a lot of interest grew from there. I was very fortunate then to also represent them at IBC, which is in Amsterdam for the European market. So you'll notice here a lot of the greats who, if you follow online content about this type of product, a lot of these great guys creating content and showing off tools like the Yolobox. So now the Extreme comes out, and I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to start offering this for my professional use. So we started doing productions all over the place, using strictly the Yolobox and PTZ cameras, television studio cameras. We use every kind of camera there is and attach it to the Yolo. I definitely use the little switcher box, the deck. Thank you, Yola deck. And then now we just launched a studio in Long Island. So now we have 3 studios in Long Island where we do content creation, and Yolobox is also one of the features on there. So here in this production, you'll notice we're using everything. We're trying to be as pro as possible. What's really cool is in this production, we were doing a broadcast with Russia. So in Russia, we had a Yolobox over there with 4 cameras. I'm patching in here in upstate New York, their camera, their Yolobox, and I'm doing the switching here with our 3 cameras. The idea of the show is they do an annual, since the 70s, using satellite trucks normally, spending millions of dollars to do a broadcast once a year where the citizens of the United States talk to the citizens of Russia and talk about the difference in lifestyles and stuff like that. It's an incredible program. They called me and says, we don't want to use satellite trucks anymore. Can you do it using the internet? So we invited the firemen, and they all joined. No. So you'll see here, we're getting, here they are inside of an auditorium with a big movie screen. They're getting the feed from the Yolobox in New York, so they're able to see us. And then they're sending us a feed to a TV here, and we're literally having a multi-broadcast. Now, what's really cool is we were broadcasting to multiple channels on social media and also Russian television. So the box is very flexible, as you heard earlier today, and very powerful, and we just wanted to make sure that we had all the right tools. The Yolobox was the only tool we relied on. We didn't have any ATEMs or any of that stuff. And then you'll see on this production, same place, different production. This was an interesting one because we had 2 Yoloboxes. One is outside with over 1,000 people in a rally, and we had some celebrity guests and military guests inside to do a podcast. So we started with the podcast, which was feeding a truck that had screens on every side of the truck so that the people outside can watch the podcast and listen to the broadcast while we're also streaming to the internet. And then we take a short 2-minute break, run outside to the rally, and then do a live outdoor broadcast with musical performances and all that type of stuff, never breaking live. And so we did that for like 4 hours. It was sick. It was sick just on the technical side of things. So the reason I bring that up is because the flexibility of what the Yolobox can let you do if you're really getting into the game, maybe you do it as a profession. In this broadcast, we did it in Fire Island. And here we have a live drone. So you'll see the Yolobox. I'm going to tell you about this in a second. Here's the controller for the drone. It's all hooked up. So the drone is feeding into the Yolobox. And now what's really sick about this one is we had set up, so a lot of the guys that I work with are professional TV studio guys. 90% of them have never live streamed. So when they start coming in and setting up, and I'm just like an extra guy that they're bringing in to do the actual broadcast, by the time I get there, their mind is stuck on how television does it, and it didn't work at all. So I had to last minute say, hey, look, we're not going to go into that building because you're blocking the wireless camera signal because we're using wireless Teradek cameras. We're inside a building. It's not going to reach. We had to go outside. I literally set up, within 10 minutes, this little setup here hooked up to these guys behind bushes. It was the most unusual setup I've ever done, but it worked. We were able to have a clear signal from the cameras, from the drones, performances, everything. And it was insane. So that portable flexibility is your weapon. And the fact that you don't have to have computers and boards and all that type of stuff is your weapon. The Yolobox, there's just nothing like it. There's some competitors that are trying right now for the past, I don't know how many years now, nothing. All right. Here's the next challenge. So then I got picked up towards the end of COVID. You guys may have heard of something called Calle Ocho. Calle Ocho is a huge music festival in Miami. It's the largest Latin music festival in the United States. It's got every major Latin music star you can think of, and they do it as a street festival in Miami. Except during COVID, they couldn't. So what we did, or what they hired me for, was can we do it and not be in the street because you're not allowed? I said, okay, but I can't do the broadcast from New York because there's TV commercials involved. All this stuff was just last minute, download the file, this upload the file, all that file upload and download. So I had to be on location. So they flew me down to Miami. I was the only one on the airplane. I was the only one in the airport, and I was literally the only one in the hotel. But the hotel had gigabit upload and download. I loved it. So in a hotel room, I set up the entire broadcast. We had preset 40 different music artists for a 4-hour concert. Now, if you guys have ever used the YOLO, you can bring in up to 5 guests at a time. So a lot of scheduling down to perfection had to be done. The ability to have commercials on a hard drive or an SD card. So I had TV commercials down pat. And we did a 4-hour, 40 entertainer concert where each entertainer performed from home or a studio that they chose through Yolobox's guest services, and we did all this. So Rosario Dawson. Now, these young ladies are really popular in Miami, in the local radio station in Miami. So they're in their bedroom during COVID with a camera, and they're hosting. So they're talking to some movie stars and TV stars. Here are the music artists. So it wasn't a beautiful concert in respect that nobody had like lighting and sets in their bedrooms. This is all raw. But it showed the passion of the artists. It showed the fact that they're willing to perform anywhere to get to their audience. We had 2 million viewers live. We broadcast to 30 different platforms simultaneously and 2 television channels in Miami in real time. in your conversation about the music. Whoa. So you got famous music artists performing. We have Gloria Estefan. We have Ivy Queen. We had Tito Puente Jr. We had a ton of great artists, all performing, all timed. Everything had to be smooth. We had, for Tito Vodka, we had a bartender actually live mixing alcohol with graphics showing this is how you mix this drink. It was insane. It was beautiful. And we had top vendors in terms of commercials. So we had Nickelodeon, we had Ford Motor Company, and I can go on. Anyway, so what's great about this was that we had all these great performances. We had all these great people. There's Tito Puente, that's Calle Ocho. And the fight that I did was the music. Because as soon as they started performing, it's a recognized song. YouTube's, multiple YouTube channels. We had People Magazine in Espanol we were broadcasting to. We had a lot of major platforms, and they're all relying on me. Mind you, I had no other production people. It was just me. So again, one tool giving you the ability to do some crazy stuff that you just, the imagination is your limit. And I'm fighting YouTube and Facebook to stay online because even though we had the permissions, like you said, and all the rights, and we had to find people because they don't have a department to get these licenses to go. We have all the paperwork, everything submitted. We had to get people in the industry to connect us, and we did. We had can't share names, but we got the right people. They turned off the switches, so most of the channels perfectly fine. But there was an occasional channel here and there that would knock me off, and I'm watching which ones get knocked off and putting them back online. So I'm fighting the whole thing. It's insane, but nothing to do with YOLO. It performed. So thank you for your time. Any questions?